I mean, here at the Phoenix office, we have a full-time acquisitions team, and these guys are literally underwriting deals every single day. So they're sending us deals constantly, and they're just sifting through it. So that's kind of the business plan is and we're renovating. We can renovate an entire unit to that scope from the moment it's being demoed to being rent ready. We're doing it in an average of 21 to 24 days per unit, doing multiple units at a time. And we're doing about 220 to 250 units a month right now.
Wow.
So yeah, we can just kind of stay very consistent with that.
You're listening to the Accredited Investors Only podcast, presented by Accredited Life.
Zach, welcome to the show. How you feeling today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Peter. Thanks for having me, man. Really looking forward to hopefully bringing some value to the audience here. Excited.
That's awesome. I appreciate you being here. And why don't we start with you introducing yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Zach Haptonstall. I'm CEO and co-founder of Rise48 Equity. So we are a private equity real estate investment company. So all we do is existing multifamily apartment buildings. And so we have our corporate office here in Phoenix, Arizona. We started in 2018. We have offices in Dallas and Charlotte, North Carolina. So those are the three markets that we're in, the Sun Belt states. And we are a vertically integrated company. So we've got our own property management company, our own construction management company. We have almost 300 full-time W-2 employees.
Wow.
We purchased about 2.4 billion of transactions, about 11,000 units, since we started. And so, yeah, it's been a fun ride. It feels like it's been like 15 years, Peter. It's only been like 7 years. So yeah, it's been fun.
Well, that's one of the first questions that came to mind, and probably something a lot of investors ask you. How did you get from where you started in 2018 to where you are today? Was it something that just kind of happened as it kind of snowballed off? And great time to start getting into the multifamily space then, but curious to what things look like back then to what they look like now.
Yeah, great question, Peter. So, I mean, I did not have any background in multifamily or real estate. I didn't have like a rich uncle or any family connections, anything like that. It was literally just, grind it out, bootstrap it, figure it out initially. And so, I mean, I would definitely say that, give you an idea, like the first 3 years, 2018, 2019, 2020, I made no money. I was actually in a bunch of debt from trying to get the company rolling. And we bought like 6 deals, 65 million. And then in the next 24 months after that, we bought about 1.3, 1.4 billion of real estate. So it really was kind of the snowball effect, or like exponential growth, where, you start to hit a certain point, you're putting in this work for years and years, and then you figure it out and you start to see, those results come. And so we were fortunate to start growing really in 21, 22, and then interest rates skyrocket, right? Which were a lot of headwinds and challenges. And I think that, we've still been very resilient and consistent, buying deals, growing, operating the deals we had previously through 2023, 2024, and still staying active now. So, our goal has always been to build like a large, private equity company with true infrastructure. I could have easily, quote unquote, retired or stopped after we sold a few of the deals where we were making, good money. We were fortunate, but we reinvested all the profits we were making into the company to build out further infrastructure and start a property management company from scratch, start a construction company from scratch. We built our own investor portal, believe it or not. We've got like software engineers in Ukraine that we've built out an actual portal the last 3 years that we use. So we've really, we're trying to set ourselves up for, be a massive company in the future. And we honestly feel like we're just getting started. We don't feel like we've achieved much. We've been fortunate to get to this point, but yeah, I mean, you go from, my two partners and I, Bikram, Robert, and our spouses kind of doing everything, to now having, offices in 3 states across the country and fully built out staff. So you have to kind of learn and change things as you go. So it's been fun.
Yeah, the maybe the skill set in the early days is different than what your day-to-day looks like now, and what you got to be good at and that kind of thing. A lot there that I want to unpack, but just getting back to, like those early days and understanding how you got started. What led you to real estate? What made you? It sounded like you said you didn't have the rich uncle, or it didn't sound like dad wasn't doing it or something like that. I mean, so what was it that brought you into the space?
Great question, Peter. Yeah. So quick background on me. I I basically wanted to be a football player initially, and so I played Division II football. Realized I wasn't big enough or good enough to go to the NFL. So then I wanted to be a sports reporter. Got a journalism degree. I was a live news anchor on Arizona PBS. Realized you can't make any money doing that. I wasn't passionate about that. Needed to make money because I had a bunch of student debt.
Mm.
I was paying for school myself and just accruing debt. And so I went into healthcare marketing because I could make money working for a hospice company, became a marketer, director of marketing, became a president and co-owner of a hospice company. Relentlessly saved money. I was miserable in hospice, honestly, in healthcare. I didn't like doing that. I was just doing it to make money and kill my debt. So beginning of 2018, January of 2018, I resigned, sold my equity that I had in that company and lived off of savings. And I did not know what I was going to do. I knew I wanted to somehow create money through real estate. And I didn't know anybody in the space. I had never even heard of syndication or multifamily when I quit the job. I was thinking I was thinking I was going to flip houses, Peter. That's what I was thinking of. So like kind of the cliche story, but I read Rich Dad Poor Dad in like December of 17. And then the next month I was like, you know what, screw this, I'm out. So I quit. I sold the equity and that I had in that healthcare company. I had like 300K of cash. So it wasn't crazy, but I had relentlessly saved that money over like 5 years. Font Dave Ramsey, and got a little bit of a pop from a little bit of equity. And so I lived off of that. And I was just consuming podcasts, going to meetups, reading books, trying to figure out, what I want to do. And so when I learned about the concept of syndication, that's when I got excited because I was like, you know what, I can leverage my time and energy to help other people and leverage their money because I don't have enough money to grow like I want to. And then I looked at all the asset classes, mobile home parks, self-storage, et cetera. And I just thought multifamily I could scale most efficiently, and there's really no ceiling on how big you can build your company with the multifamily. And so that's where I said, okay, I want to do multifamily syndication. Long story short, it took 14 months from when I quit that job to close the first deal, February of 2019. And then just kept rolling. You just try to focus one deal at a time, and you keep growing. And you just got to put yourself out there, go to conferences, meet investors, start doing podcasts like this one, Peter, and it just helps. Things start to really snowball from there.
Yeah. How was it like raising capital back in those days versus what you do now? I feel like you guys have built one of the biggest brands in the in this industry, and I see you guys everywhere. And how was it back in those early days raising money for your first few deals?
Yeah, and it's a good question, Peter. It's funny because I think you and I are recording this in January 2025 when interest rates are high, transactions are dead. Everybody says it's hard to raise money. It was hard to raise money when you're getting started. 2015,
Sure.
I think things were good, right? Everything was booming.
Yeah.
And it was a grind to raise money because you had no experience, no track record, right? And so it was.
What was the team like? Was it you and who else? Like, I'm assuming you were outsourcing property management and stuff like that, or like what did that look
Yeah,
like?
we used third-party management the first couple of years, and we realized they cannot stay on schedule but we used 3 of them. We fired a couple of them and then fired the third one and just said, let's start our own. This is crazy, but they couldn't stay on schedule or on budget. So it was really Robert is our chief construction officer, Bikram is our CFO, and myself. And then our spouses were doing a lot of stuff like marketing, investor relations, stuff like that. So we were doing every little nook and cranny dimension of the company you can imagine. And so that allowed us to really learn so that when we started generating revenue, we could hire staff and train them how to do it and then start to scale and go from there. So, I mean, yeah. And initially the first couple of years, there was no Rise48 Equity. We each had our own little individual brands. Like I was actually I was ZH Multifamily for like the first 6 deals we bought, and Bikram was like Bride Investors, and Robert was like RNA. So you know how it is when you see a deck and you got all these brands. Well, it was Bikram's idea. He's like, you know what? Let's become a real company. He's like, Zach, you're the CEO, I'm the CFO. Robert, you're the chief construction officer. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And we converted to an S corp and kind of got quote unquote married in the business set. We had a combined brand, and until we started to answer your initial question, Peter, until we started selling deals and going full cycle, it was really hard to raise money. Once we started selling deals, started getting repeat investors, started getting referrals, you started to build infrastructure. And then as we built infrastructure and we improved our investor reporting, we were getting K1s out timely. We had our own property management. I think that it just gives you more credibility, and investors start to compare different sponsors and all these different things you're trying to do. I mean, you're doing it in reality, obviously, to be a better operator and get better results. But there are residual marketing benefits from it too, right? It's like investors like the idea of a vertically integrated firm. And so the bigger you get, the more infrastructure, the more track record you can start, continue to raise money. So it is easier to raise money now, obviously, than when we first got started those first few years. But, it's still challenging in this environment. I mean, 23 and 24 have been really tough. We've still been able to, keep growing and finding deals, but it's challenging for sure.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I think a lot of investors have gotten burnt through operators, and especially multifamily deals, probably more so than others, but other asset classes as well. So they're always that it chokes you up, and it makes you think harder, and and then overanalyzing just obviously, leads to inaction a lot of times. So there's a lot to talk about there. But and it sounds like you guys you're not shy about reinvesting profits into growing the business. You know what I mean? And I'm sure you guys spend money on marketing. I know you do because I've seen you as sponsors and things like that. So those are the kind of things that help to just grow the overall brand and yeah, brand awareness, I think, is such an important thing, because how much due diligence can investors do at the end of the day, and how much are they qualified to do in a lot of times? So that brand awareness tends to, I think, be a very powerful thing in this space.
100%. Yeah. Brand awareness is key. You're exactly right, Peter. And, yeah, I mean, the bulk of our marketing is done through social media. It's our marketing team that kind of does it all. It's funny. I have not posted myself on LinkedIn in over 3 years. And I actually haven't even been on LinkedIn in over 4 months. I actually took it off my phone.
Yeah.
I hate social media. I think
I was gonna say you're not missing much.
yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I've never had an Instagram in my entire life.
Yeah.
But it's a necessary evil, and it's super effective for business, right? So we have a marketing team that runs all of our LinkedIn's, and then yeah, we try to get out there, and you just have to be visible, And so even when we first started, it's like I didn't have a brand or a track record, and I was like, you know what, we have to get attention somehow, and it's scary, you know what I mean? I speak a lot, and then you get nervous. I mean, it doesn't go away. People think it does, it doesn't. You deal with nerves and anxiety, and the bigger you get, the more pressure that there is. But I mean, even when we first started, my wife and I started a meetup, and we started getting 15 people, 50 people, we got to 200 people, and it's just these different things you do that kind of helps to build that credibility.
Sure. And was it like something to educate? Like, is that kind of the angle that you would take?
Exactly. Yeah, I'd bring in like panel of speakers, like brokers, insurance guys, property managers, whatever, do a case study. So you're trying to provide content or education. In exchange, you're building a community, potential passive investors. The reality, we didn't get a lot of passive investors from it. I tell people that the benefit of speaking at events or hosting your own meetup or whatever, it's not even at that event that you're getting the benefit. It's all the photos that you can put on social media, and you can your news, because it just shows that you're out there, and it creates exposure, right? And it gives you perceived credibility. So
Yeah.
people need to you have to put yourself out there. Even if you bomb your speaking event, nobody will know that if they weren't just see you speaking on stage, like, wow, that's impressive. You know what I mean? So that's how you kind of think, honestly.
It's funny you say that because yeah, the company I was at prior to starting the company that I'm at now, we used to do that all the time. I mean, it was one of those, like, we did a lot of local events, and I always kind of wonder, why are we doing these local events? They're not really translating to dollars in the door the same way that like post on Bigger Pockets and like like articles and social media stuff would. But it's just that concept of now when people do find you, that they're seeing those live events and things like that, and that translates to something. So
Exactly.
makes a lot of sense.
SEO, all that stuff. So yeah, it all can kind of.
So getting to, like, the elephant in the room, obviously you mentioned it, things have changed so drastically with interest rates going up. How's that evolved your business over the years? I mean, obviously you guys are still, churning and burning, looking for deals, that kind of thing. So how are you, what lessons have you learned, and like, how are you underwriting differently, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, we had a lot of floating rate debt, like a lot of people, and it taught us we need to buy, lower interest rate caps where there's no delta between the existing interest rate and where that cap is at. And so even to this point, we have not done a capital call, never lost investor capital, never missed a monthly debt payment with any lender. And so it really, what it did is it forced us to become even more efficient as an operator in regard to renovating units on schedule, on budget. Because in 2023, like near the end of 22, I told our team, we got to crank it next year. We have to force appreciation and push NOI significantly to fight back against the interest rates. So we renovated almost 2,000 units in 2023 alone, got over $450 rental increases. And that was really our saving grace. Whereas a lot of groups kind of just curled up, wanted to preserve liquidity, did not renovate. And a lot of them are toast now. You know what I mean? And so, so for us, it made a big difference to do that. And it really improved all of our, operational processes. And it's funny because prior to that, when you're growing and you're achieving success, a lot of people would criticize us, say, oh, well, you haven't been through a downturn, or
Sure.
anybody can do well in this market. Well, now, we're outperforming a lot of groups that have been around for 10 or 20 years, and so it's kind of trial by fire, and we've grown through that immensely. And then obviously, you change underwriting assumptions and things like that. But even through all this, on average, we've exceeded our pro forma rents, even though we've been having to overcome negative organic rent growth in the markets that we're in the last 24 months. And I think that, the fact that we've been able to do that is why we can keep raising money, because we have a lot of investors, and people are comparing that, like who they've invested. I mean, a ton of our investors have lost money with other groups the last 24 months.
Yeah.
And so I think, it makes you stronger. It sucks. It's been like living in hell for 2 years, honestly, but you got to grind through it. And it just comes down to like, what is your goal for the company? Like a lot of people are just done and they're not going to probably come back. You know what I mean? But you want to grow and you want to achieve your goals, you got to overcome adversity. And that's what we've been going through, frankly. So
Yeah.
I think we'll come out of it, looking back and be grateful for it.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and to your point, people, the questions were lingering, and I've heard that a lot too, with such a huge percentage of GPs were created, during 2018 and 2019 and all, and so it's just naturally there's going to be some that make it and some that don't, and the cream will rise to the top, that kind of thing. And doing the right thing will ideally pay off. And then this way too, once you get on the other end of it, it's one of those things that will only help to sell the story and the brand and the experience of the team and the company. The company I was at prior to starting GSP went through 2007, 2008, 2009, all that kind of stuff, and that was always a selling point. And it was one of those things where people would ask, you were around then, how did you learn? How did you adapt? All that kind of stuff. So there'll definitely be a time when people ask, like in the future, how would you adapt, when interest rates went on? Not that people aren't asking it now, but even more so.
Yeah, no, you're right. It'll be a big thing that people ask, right? It's important for your track record.
Yeah. So you guys, it sounds like, I didn't know you've expanded out of Arizona and into Dallas. And what was the other place you said?
North Carolina.
North Carolina. So
Charlotte and Green.
Curious, what brought you there? What were kind of the indicators that you saw, and what's the goal in those markets, and then how did you take the vertical integration to those markets, and how did that work? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, good question, Peter. Yeah, so really, when interest rates started shooting up in 2022, we saw an opportunity to capture market share because a lot of the competition was on the sidelines, and we wanted to enter what had historically been really competitive, strong markets and kind of see the opportunity. And so it was November of 22. I was like, you know what, we're going to Dallas, because we bought like our first 40 deals in Phoenix, and we have a lot of investors that are invested in like 5 to 10 deals with us. They're like, hey, we love your reporting, we love everything you're doing, but I don't want to keep investing in Phoenix. I want diversification, right? And,
Sure.
and they've been telling us that for a couple of years, and we just said we are making sure we can build out all of our systems and processes so that when we do expand, we can do it effectively. And so by the time we got to near the end of 22, we had the vertical integration of our own property management company. We had our own construction management company. We were sourcing and purchasing all of our own materials direct and wholesale. So we controlled our supply chain, and we made sure that we could replicate that in other markets. And so basically I call all the brokers in Phoenix, say, hey, we're going to Dallas. Can you refer me? These are all the same firms. There's like 5 or 6 brokers that control like 90% of the deal flow. Right. They referred us, endorsed us. We immediately went into Dallas in 2023 with the #1 buyer in Dallas in the country in 2023.
Wow.
In the last 24 months, we've bought 14 deals, 3,300 units in DFW, Dallas, Fort Worth. And yeah, so we are doing all the same stuff. We're doing all our own property management, construction management. We hired a regional vice president to oversee those markets. I think we have around 80 employees now, full-time, boots on the ground in Dallas. We have an office there.
So you're not just like GCing work out. I mean, you actually have boots on the ground staff that does certain work as well. Because I think a lot of times with vertical integration, people mean that in different ways, and sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, some people aren't really authentic with what they're saying, and yeah, no, there's no corners cut. Like every single employee on site is our employee, full time. Like we have almost 300 full time W-2 employees.
That's amazing.
Markets. So like that's the difference is that we don't even like to be called a syndicator. Honestly, it's kind of offensive because there's like syndicative compensation, right? We're bigger than a lot of publicly traded REITs right now.
I would think, yeah.
Like people think you're public, you're huge. We're bigger than a lot of these groups. We have more infrastructure. So yeah, so basically we expanded to Dallas, and then in 2024 we expanded to North Carolina. So we have an office in Charlotte. We own 3 deals, about 500 units. We're about to close on a 4th deal in 4 weeks there. So we have about 15, 20 employees in North Carolina right now. And so those are our primary markets. We're probably going to expand to Florida, either this year or next year. So I was just there a couple months ago, kind of meeting all the brokers and scouting everything out in Tampa and Orlando. So yeah, we basically have the exact same model where it's all the same materials. We buy them all fixed pricing, so it's the exact same scope, same philosophy. We're buying the same types of deals so that we can kind of rinse and repeat that model.
Gotcha. And that draws up some questions, but talk to me about like the dance between like entering that new market and making those hires and things like that. Because I would think you need to reach a certain amount of scale in a certain amount of time in order to justify, especially W-2s and all. So speak to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, the good thing is that the larger we got, we have a lot of recurring revenue, right? So we have asset management fees, construction management fees, property management fees. So the company can support itself. And so we do all these calculations, when we're looking at scaling. And yeah, I mean, to your point, when we're going to enter a market, we need to own it within the first 36 months. We need to own like 2,000 units or so for it to really make sense. Okay. Otherwise the vertical integration, like that's why we don't go to little tertiary markets and buy 1 or 2 off deals. Like I want to be in the strongest core markets in the country. That are landlord friendly, where I can actually build scale, and so yeah, that's what we only focus on those markets specifically. And yeah, I mean, I guess I shouldn't say this, but the truth is it was easier than we thought it would be, because a lot of stuff just translated over. Like our supplier had a warehouse, so the materials and the supply chain were the same. We already had our own in-house recruiting staff, and so we just would fly out there constantly, and they still go out there to hire staff and interview staff. And it really is, it's all about finding the right leadership team. Like once you get those 3 or 4 top leaders, if you're all figure salaried employees, everything will flow below them, right? And so like we have our president of operations and a VP of operations, and then we have a regional vice president in Dallas who reports to them, and then she's got regional directors that oversee the assets, and then you've got all your on-site staff, and you've got operations specialists, asset managers. On our construction team, we have supply coordinators who receive the shipments, make sure everything looks right, manage, the inventory and stuff like that. We have construction coordinators who are walking the units 40 hours a week, making sure everything's staying on schedule, on budget. Then we have quality control guys who will sign off, release the unit to the on-site manager and leasing agent, who's our staff as well in the property management entity. And so you have to have everything kind of, cohesively working. And I mean, when we went to Charlotte, we actually had 3 employees who had been with us for over 2 years in Phoenix that wanted to move out there because they just wanted to change. So they had volunteered. We didn't ask them. They permanently relocated. And it was one of our regional directors, a construction guy, and an HR lady who is now our office manager there. So that was kind of a seamless transition too. So it's about finding, those right people, and then things will kind of flow meet them.
Wow, that was going to be one of my questions was, the challenges of running not only the investment company, but also, the construction company and the property management company. I think you answered that you answered that question. That's amazing. What percentage do you have offices in these places? I think you said you did. What percentage is going into the office every day versus virtual? You have any people that are virtual, and if so, like, I wonder what do they do and all?
Yeah. So we only have two virtual employees, and they're both on the capital formation team. Like they're basically raising money, and it's because we worked with them each as a couple for a couple years as fund managers, so we know they can raise a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel comfortable. In general, I don't like virtual workers, to be honest. Like we have a
Yeah.
culture, everybody has to show up. So like in Phoenix, we have a 21,000 square foot building that we own. We bought it, the three of us just bought it personally here in Scottsdale, and everybody has to show up here. We have like 80 to 90 corporate employees. Everybody shows up to the office 9 to 5. And then the rest of the employees are obviously at their properties.
Mm-hmm.
Then in Dallas, we have a brick and mortar office that people to show up to every single day. And then in Charlotte as well. What we realize is that as you expand to new markets, you don't need as many people in the office at these, called satellite offices, just because the HQ in Scottsdale is where a lot of your back office, like all the accounting, investor relations, marketing is.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, of your staff in these other markets are going to be in the field, right? Yeah, but yeah, we do have offices in all three of these markets, and then we've got people in there 40 hours a week in those offices.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we have that.
Yeah, I assume that was the case, because it seems like in order to run it successfully, the culture and all that is very important. And I don't know how the heck you replicate that with a ton of virtual employees, that kind of thing.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, like you mentioned a good point, culture. So like I'll go to Dallas quarterly and we do an all staff meeting. And then we do a team event. We do the same thing in Phoenix. I'll start doing it in North Carolina now that we're growing the team. But just a few weeks ago, we had our Christmas party, and we flew all the staff out from Dallas and North Carolina to Phoenix. And we had 500 people at our Christmas party
Wow.
in Phoenix because they bought plus ones, right? And so we brought everybody across the country, flew out, to do that. So we do all this stuff so that there is that culture, and you got to get people to really, buy in, and there has to be accountability when you have these other markets. And so you have to have like high level, well compensated people that are kind of overseeing those things day to day.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you guys have a very singular focus when it comes to multifamily, and then within that space, the type of product that you buy. Explain though what it is. I'm I'm quite curious now. I mean, especially because what you said, I love what you're talking, because we do the same thing from our construction standpoint. Same type of product going into every unit. I mean, all that kind of stuff. There's so many advantages to that when you're buying in bulk, and then installation and all that kind of stuff. So just paint a picture. I'm like looking for a mental image of the type of properties that you're buying.
Yeah, good question, Peter. So we're very vanilla. I tell people we're kind of boring. We stick to our box, and that's all we do. We do not get outside of our box. So we're buying apartment buildings that are built between the 1980s to early 2000s, at least 100 plus units. And we're going in there and we're doing the same exact three-tone exterior paint scheme on every single deal. Like we have a painter who's in Phoenix, started with us, and he travels to Dallas. He brings like his team of like 15 guys, and he does all of our deals across the country. He like buy houses in these other markets. We do the same exact monument signs, landscaping. We renovate the clubhouses, leasing office, amenities, fitness center, dog park. And then we do a very high level interior scope. Okay. So because we're sourcing these materials directly wholesale, we get deep discounts. We can do a much superior scope than most of our competition, which means we're doing real quartz countertop. We're basically gutting the entire unit, and we're doing quartz countertop, new vinyl plank flooring, undermount sinks, modern plumbing pull down fixtures, stainless steel appliances, subway tile backsplash, brand new cabinet boxes with shaker doors and brushed nickel hardware, LED lighting. And so everything is the exact same scope. It looks like a class A luxury interior, but it's in like B class, workforce housing type of building built in the 1980s or early 2000s. And that's where the majority of the population lives. Those rents are affordable. And so everything we're doing is a value add strategy. These deals are a needle in a haystack. They're really hard to find. We have data that since 2022, or the last 24 months, I guess, we've underwritten like 650 deals, and like 2% of them have made sense. It's like a 2% hit rate. But I mean, here at the Phoenix office, we have a full-time acquisitions team, and these guys are literally underwriting deals every single day. So they're sending us deals constantly, and they're just sifting through it. So that's kind of the business plan. Is we just and we're renovating. We can renovate an entire unit to that scope from the moment it's being demoed to being rent ready. We're doing it an average of 21 to 24 days per unit, doing multiple units at a time.
Yeah.
And we're doing about 220 to 250 units a month right now.
Wow.
So yeah, we can just kind of stay very consistent with that.
That's amazing. That paints the picture there, definitely. So what would you say is something that you're excited about in 2025 moving forward?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I'm excited about growing these markets, honestly. Like, we entered North Carolina in 2024. We got off to a slower start than we thought, just because we couldn't find deals that made sense. And so we just got a deal in Charlotte. We're closing on soon, a 2000 vintage build. So we'll have 4 deals there, a little over 700 units. So we want to grow that market. Excited for opportunities in Dallas. I would say we're excited for interest rates to cut, but it sounds like that's not going to happen, Pete. So we're not. So yeah, I mean, I mean, but we're looking forward to more opportunities and just continuing to grow and scale. And the last 6 months of 24, and this will continue into 25, is personally, I've been focused on being more of a CEO. In the past, I've been more of like the money raising guy, leadership, but I felt like I was getting caught up too much in the minutia, of the company, the day to day. And I've been hiring key people who have been taking over capital raising. So now I'm really removed from that, which helps a lot. I got a good executive assistant. We've hired, better, high level leadership people, so I can focus on larger partnerships to kind of scale the company. I've been focusing on, like, we just implemented a program called Culture Index, which really helps to hire people better and to kind of put people that are internally already on your team in the best places to succeed. So I want to create more infrastructure and make it more institutional in nature. I'm in the process right now of trying to put together an advisory board. So I'm talking to a couple of billionaires who have, been doing this for decades and really successful. So I want to get high level guidance so that we can take it to the next level. You know what I mean? And making sure we want to have institutional funds.
Okay.
And our goal is to be the largest real estate company in the world, which I know sounds kind of cheesy to some people, but and we think we can do it. And so that's what we're working towards. And so we just like to keep on, taking on these challenges and grow responsibly.
Yeah, that's amazing. I was going to ask you, what was kind of the goal, but you answered it there, because I'm always curious to see, especially when somebody like yourself you're building a company. And I mean, like, I think that's such an important aspect, because a lot of people, a lot of real estate investors, I think about building a portfolio, and they don't necessarily think about the company behind it. And you're at a stage now where the company is in the forefront, and I think that'll just lead to growth. I mean, now that you're thinking differently in that sense, right?
Yeah, 100%. You're exactly right. The thinking has changed because now I don't need to be here to run the day to day. The company runs itself with all of our people that we have. And so now I can be freed up to focus on how can we improve things that we're doing, how can we kind of grow and challenge ourselves, and just kind of have that higher level mindset.
Yeah. Now that you're in that mindset, looking back, what's something that you maybe would have done differently if you could have? You know what I mean? Like, what's some advice that you would give to another company, to yourself, like back in 2018 or something like that? Even though obviously the metrics in the marketplace and things like that are so much different today than they were back then. But I'm curious, is there anything that you would share with somebody who's in that position, that you maybe now on the opposite, with the mindset you have today, something there.
Yeah, no, good question, Peter. So the first 6 months of 2018, I felt like I wasted a lot of time because I was trying to, I was self-teaching myself, which was valuable, like with, podcasts, books, but I was trying to find other people, and I started going to conferences like 6 months in, and I joined a couple, mentorship programs just to meet other like-minded people. And that actually helped to really collapse the time frame. So I think if you can start going to events to meet other people that are doing what you're trying to do, and the quicker that you can identify what are your strengths and weaknesses in the business? Like, what dimensions of the business do you like to do and you're good at, and what do you hate to do and you're not good at? Find partners or employees or somebody who can do the things that you don't like to do and you're not good at. You need to really, find the complementary partners that will help collapse the time frame
Mm.
to kind of keep you moving forward. And so I think, that is one thing, is get yourself out there. Find other people that can you have to kind of think of yourself as like a general manager of a professional sports team, and you got to put the pieces in place to get to success, right? Like, I knew that I wanted to focus on like leadership, managing partnerships, and raising capital, but I hated underwriting. I hated Excel. So I found Bikron, who has an economics degree and is a CPA, and he likes Excel, but he hates talking to people, right? And so I needed a construction guy. So I found Robert. So I went through a lot of people that, I was thinking of partnering with before you find kind of the right team. And so I think that's what you have to do. And the other thing is, and I don't know that you can redo this aspect of it, 'cause I think you have to go through this as part of the growth and the evolution as an entrepreneur. But my advice is to people is, do not listen to people that tell you you cannot do it. Like, don't take advice from people, and don't take crap from anybody, because there's a lot of people that will tell you can't do it.
Sure.
People more successful, and you think of them as quote unquote mentors.
Mhm.
I people that I thought of as kind of like mentors. And then when you start to show your ambition and you start achieving things, they start to feel threatened, you know what I mean? Or jealous, or whatever it is. So my advice is like, you shouldn't let anybody tell you you can't do it, because they're not the one that has to put the work in to achieve your goals. So you have to put that work in, right? So who are they to say that you can't do it? So I think as you start going through the adversity, when you're just starting up, you have to get a hardened shell almost, and thicker skin, right? And then you start to achieve success. You'll start to get haters, critics, whatever, and you just continue to thicken that. So and this can apply to any entrepreneur, any business, right? It's just, that's a mindset thing.
Definitely. No, I think you make a really good point, and it's one of those things that when I look back at my, upcoming in the real estate world, I was introduced to, obviously, Rich Dad Poor Dad, like you were, with one hand, and the other was Earl Nightingale's The Strangest Secret, and it was about how you think, and how you feel, and your mindset and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's such an important aspect that a lot of people forget. It's just like they're so deal focused, or the size of the portfolio, whatever it is. And
Yep.
this is a tough business, and there's going to be ups and downs and things like that, and you really have to have your head on straight, or you're gonna, there's days where you're gonna question everything. Why did I do this? Why did I do that? So the mindset is such an important aspect of it. One final question for you: Are you guys? Has it all been individual syndications, or do you do funds? And curious to what the opportunities are for accredited investors that invest with you guys.
Yeah, good question, Peter. We have both. And so, yeah, so we offer both options, where we do individual syndications, and then we do have funds, because what we found is most investors prefer the individual deals. They
Sure.
don't, they like to see the story in that location. But we also have funds that we've done where, if you're investing in our fund, you're basically investing in all of the deals we'll acquire in that calendar year. So you're diversified. You've got higher cash flow, but your money may not be liquid for a longer period of time. And so, yeah, so we have both options for investors, just to kind of, meet their needs.
Gotcha. Well, Zach, I really appreciate the conversation here, and a lot of good stuff. I feel like we could have talked a lot longer as well. But how can people, if they want to find out more, and explore more about you and Rise48, how can they find out more?
Yeah, thanks so much, Peter. Really appreciate it. You can go to our website, rise48equity.com, RISE48equity.com, and you can actually set up a call with our investor team if you're interested in investing or learning more about the team. So, check us out there, and we'd love to talk to you.
Where'd the name come from?
So we were Summit Equity initially, Peter, and then we started buying deals. When we decided to become a marriage, so to speak, like I talked about earlier, we were Summit Equity. Then we got a cease and desist letter from another Summit Equity that said, "Hey, we're Summit Equity, and
Sure.
if people are calling us thinking we're you, we're going to sue you. We have a federal trademark." And I was like, "Screw these." I called a trademark attorney, and he said, "Yeah, they have a federal trademark. They will sue you." So we had to change the name, and my wife thought of Rise because it sounded cool, but it wasn't unique enough to get a trademark. So we added 48 because Arizona is the 48th state. It's like a saying here, state 48.
Oh, okay.
Rise 48 with no space, so that we could be unique enough to get our own federal trademark. And it's kind of funny. There a couple years later, there was another firm called Rise something that started buying deals in Phoenix, and our attorney sent them a season, and they changed the name. So it kind of
came full circle. Well, you know what? It's one of those names too. It just it stands out. You know, it's not like a Summit. Actually, that's like when you said that, I'm thinking there's probably another Summit out there. But yeah, Rise48. It's one of those names that kind of stands out, and I think that all just helps towards the brand and the recognition, right?
Yeah. No, thanks, Peter.
Awesome. Well, Zach, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks so much, Peter. Really appreciate it.
Have a good one.